I promise you a half hour of intense information. So what I'm going to present to you typically is done over 2 days, and you get it in 30 minutes. So get prepared for a high speed. So we've done research on multi-billion-dollar deals for a few years. And why do you do that? So in most areas, you want to study the best. And in B2B, you find really superstars among the multi-billion-dollar deals. So some of you would think, but that doesn't fit at all to what we're doing. But what we've found is that a lot of the patterns on sales and marketing are adaptable to medium-sized B2B businesses, hence the second part of the headline. I think this is not. The two computers in the back, so they need to switch. Okay, are we on? Okay, good. No. Yes. Okay, great. So the first motive when studying multi-billion-dollar deals was that in most B2B literature, it's talking about complex sales. And in all honesty, when you look at B2B complex sales, it's too wide of an audience. It's too wide of a selection. So to try to find similarities between copy printer sales and selling Boeing, it's too different. So I'll talk about some of those differences. And during my Vendormore years, I started a company called Vendormore. We started ABM same month as Demandbase. We then sold it off to Bisnode, so I'm no longer involved. But we were working with over 100 Fortune 500 companies. And I had the fortune of being in a lot of workshops around their largest deals. And I often asked them, so where are your type of deals described in literature? And almost always they said, it isn't. It's not described at all. What we do isn't described. So I was like, interesting. So I started to collect what then became the hypothesis of a big research project with over 100 people. I'll give that to you today, but again, very high speed. So sales is now becoming split. You see a growth of transactional selling, like the self-service selling. And the traditional buying is diminishing, and the complex selling is becoming more complex. And the decision-making is becoming distributed. So when people like Sirius, et cetera, are saying they're 5.7 decision makers, yes, that's coming from when you take all B2B sales, then the number is probably 5.7. But when you look at the really complex deals, the audience inside a company is often more than 100 people. And that is often forgotten. So when you take the average number of a too wide sample, you get 5.7. I think that number is really dangerous, so don't use it internally. Look at what your business logic is. If you're into the more advanced, distributed, or mega deals, your audience is way larger. I'll come back to that later. Right, what is a mega deal? So we've looked at deals between $10 million and $15 billion. Then people say, oh, $15 billion, that must be M&A. No, that's an Airbus deal. So between a supplier and a buyer. The mega deals are multidimensionally complex. So it's not just the application and the usage of the application that is complex. It's the decision-making that is complex, the financing structure, et cetera. So quite a few complexities. I'm not going into that today. It takes too long. Almost all mega deals are a mix of hardware, software, and services. And in our definition, it has to include change management. So I give you an example of what is not a mega deal. Let's say I've sold steel to David for $1 billion 5 years in a row. The 6th year he's buying steel for $1 billion again. That is not a mega deal. It's closer to a transactional deal. So the research started during my Vendormore years where we created a hypothesis that then laid the foundation for the interviews. What we did in the beginning was to, and you can try this if you want, so we asked people that have done multi-billion-dollar deals, so how do you do them? But that's a bit like asking Wayne Gretzky, how do you play great hockey? You think the answers were smart? No. They said, yeah, we do the need analysis, we map the stakeholders. They gave all the obvious answers. So what we did instead was to say, so we collected all our hypotheses and said, this is what you do. And then they could speak for hours because we provoked them. So we told them, this is what you do. Now you need to tell me what is correct, what should be rephrased, what should be taken out, and what have we missed. And in the beginning of the research, we had a lot of feedback. But then about half of the audience, it started to be more like a deep, like a straight line. They more and more said, okay, you have put words on what I've felt my entire life, plus you're describing things that I'm not doing yet. Those two sentences I love. So that meant we nailed it, and you can be the judge of that. So in Megadeals, it's not about me selling to another person or 5.7. It's a lot about orchestration. So the people leading the sales efforts around the Megadeal is running a team of people. Some of you guys are doing this already, and it also includes quite a few different skills and components. So it's account-based marketing that many of you are already using. It's enterprise social selling, which is different to normal social selling. I'll show you a few examples. It's contracting and financing that we won't cover at all today. It would take 2 more days. And then dialogue techniques. Dialogue techniques are what you find in challenger sales, solution selling, et cetera. It's talking about how do I progress, how do I run meetings, and how do I progress the process rhetorically. We're not covering that. We're covering the rest. So to read the Megadeals book, you should have read at least one dialogue technique book. So it's kind of covering the rest of the things. So part 1 is to understand a Megadeal. And the second part is how do you then, based on that understanding, work differently with methods and tools. So the first item of top 5 mega mistakes is that you're not aligned with a key initiative. So in big organizations, they're typically larger organizations that buy Megadeals. If your deal is not aligned with one of their key initiatives, you're not going to get big money from them. So an easy takeaway from today that you can apply tomorrow and you will make immediate money is to look for key initiatives, and it's typically found in the annual reports. So if your sales team start to study, and don't have to read all the numbers, it's typically in the more strategy and those kind of parts. And key initiatives are sometimes called strategic programs. Big bets is what American Express is calling it. And they're typically 3 to 5. It's not 25, they're few. And you find them also in smaller companies, but they're more frequently existing in larger organizations. And you can describe it like this as well. So a key initiative takes you, based on the strategy and your values, it's taking you from now to the vision. So these are really, really important for a big organization. And the good news is that since they are so important, they're well communicated. So even if you can't find it in the annual report, by just asking a few people in that organization, you will get them. Because it's so critical that the whole organization understands them and also assist in getting them implemented. Okay. The second mistake is that a Megadeal is not done with 5.7 decision makers. It's not even done with one organization. And I'm sure that many of you can relate to this. You need to convince an ecosystem of organizations and people, not just the stakeholders within your account. So inside the account, it can look like this. You have a few centers that you need to address. There can be a different hierarchical level and different functional area. But many of you know this, most big organizations are matrices or even more complex than that. And in a Megadeal, you need to get parties outside the buying organization aligned as well. Consultants, partners, adjacent software. Many of you come from the IT industry. Adjacent IT that you need to interface with. If those vendors are saying, no, that company X, no, they're no good, then actually the customer can I'm sure, how many of you have been part of that? When some party in the ecosystem is blocking the deal. Yeah, so when you think about how to sell and market, you need to take this into consideration. So many advanced organizations are mapping the stakeholders, but they do it only in the buying organization. Well, I have tons of stories about this, but we have our 30 minutes, so I need to rush it. The third one is to fail to achieve consensus. Large purchases are done by many people, especially when you have big amounts, big changes, and risk on the table. Very few, even top managers are making a big decision alone. They need to anchor it, and not just to get the decision through, but also to, if something fails, they're not completely chopped, right? And the fourth one is to miss out Trojan horses. A Trojan horse, some people say, oh, you mean a champion? No, a Trojan horse, a lady that does Megadeals at Accenture, she calls them mushrooms. So Trojans are silent. So you can find them in a meeting. You're having a meeting. Let's say it's 5 people from us. It's 12 people from the customer. And then the meeting ends, and someone says, Christopher, I can follow you to the door. Like we can't find our way out. So typically, they go, yeah, so Allison wasn't here. And you need to get a hold of her. And Steven, he was really nice to you guys, but he's not in favor of you, and you're competing with these 2 vendors. Typically, they give less information than that, but what they do is that they open up a door saying, I'm willing to talk. And we've heard evidence that unless you have a few Trojan horses, you will not make a mega deal, because the certainty is that your competitors have them. And they're typically of very low title. Their way of executing power is through information. I'm sure all of you have been a Trojan at one point or another. You have a favorite vendor, and you're like, pss, 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 sharing some information with them. Right, and the fifth one, which is a large one, we can talk about this for a long, long time, is failing to work with risk. So I really liked both Snowflake and Todd, who talked about transparency. The best mega dealers are openly talking about risk with their client, and not just risk when not doing anything, but rather risk when doing something. So what are the risks you're taking when you engage with us? And you saw this in Todd's presentation too. I haven't talked to him before, so we're not synced. It just happens to be the same. If you appear as too perfect, they're not buying from you. So any senior mega dealer is openly saying that we have weaknesses. But they're also talking about them. And they're not solving all the risks. They're leaving some risk on the table, because it's not credible otherwise. If you solve all the risks, like there is something hidden here. Right, okay. Let's go into the next part. Yeah, and the most advanced companies are even integrating risk into their offering, which is kind of what Siemens and Tata and these guys are doing. Really good at this. And you can charge much, much more if you're seen as trustworthy and low risk. You can charge a really high premium. So the 5 bullets, do you remember them? So it's align with key initiatives. This is really simple, so please do this one. Bring it home. Understand and map the ecosystem, not just internal stakeholders. Create consensus at scale. As you can already figure out, ABM and enterprise social selling plays a great role at consensus creation. And then find and develop Trojan horses. Too much literature and too many people say, yeah, always go for the C-suite. We can talk about that for a while. But no, many mega deals are never, ever, ever starting at the C-suite. Because if you go in with too little information to someone in the C-suite, you will be fried alive. So you need to build the attack from beneath. You need to do research calls. You need to find Trojan horses. You need to tap around and feel them out. And then, when you do the attack to the C-suite, you're super prepared. And the last one is to work with risk mitigation. Right. So, and this is just one thing that I wanted to mention. all mega dealers are great at exiting deals early. So a lot of companies are talking about qualification. I rather say disqualification. So disqualify customers early. So the best guy we had at Climeon, where I was in the last 2 years, he was super cynical. He really searched for reasons to exit, almost to the extent that the customers were annoyed. But he exited early, and he sold most. And this is a pattern we've seen with the best mega dealers. So see the funnel as a T rather than a V. Okay, so I had the luxury of, so I was an investor in Climeon, and I said to the CEO, if I join as head of sales and marketing, I invest this much money, but I also want us to do this, but I want us to agree on this now, not when I have joined. So the cool thing is that we had come pretty far with the Megadeal research already, and I also knew already that then Mark Stews, who's the founder of Proof, I'll show you a bit about that later, but that's analytically approach. How do you place the marketing and sales money better? So he whispered to me a few things, and I saw a few things in our research, and we grew order intake from $3 to $90 million in 2 years. And a few of the things that we did was to make the organization marketing driven as opposed to sales. And Climeon is selling power plants. So you're kind of expecting gray-haired men going around shaking hands, having dinners. So when I said we should be marketing driven, it was like, right. So we spent more money on marketing than on the whole sales force combined, which is unusual in B2B. So that's one of the things we see also in the research. That's one of the things we see at Proof Analytics. Marketing is underfunded severely in B2B. We cut 40 resellers. My experience is that young companies don't benefit at all from going through resellers. You have to prove the market yourselves. You have to get the recipe for success, and then you scale through partners. So I see a lot of young companies, they're like, yeah, it's so cool, we have so cool technology, we can scale through partners. And the statement before I joined was that we know the technology, the partners know the market. I said, that won't work. It's going to fail. So I cut all the 40 resellers, which was painful. I had some pretty kind of nasty phone calls where people screamed in my ear. And we shrunk the total go-to-market spend over those 2 years. And we cut sales staff from 10 to 6. And we increased marketing with almost the same amount. And we focused on doing videos and articles, at least one of each per week. And we used account-based advertising, social media, and PR as kind of the big distribution engines. So I can comment on this. I see a lot of companies that are overcomplicating their reach. So they're kind of missing the big goal. Too focused on small items. Okay, so how can you use methods to work on this, what I showed you? So first of all, focus, as some of you have talked about. Focus your sales efforts and your marketing efforts better. So sales is very often distributed in a good way, but marketing is often spread out across the board. You even meet organizations, I'm sure that one or two of you would say, yeah, marketing takes care of the market and sales doesn't take care of. That's a horrible statement. So sales and marketing should work as one team, focusing on the best accounts. And we spent about 60% of our budget on various types of account-based marketing. And this is a the messaging architecture, the fundament on how we built it. So I'll show you a bit on the messaging architecture. We produce videos and articles and the PowerPoints based on this. And we distribute it via account-based advertising, various types of social media, and PR. PR is, by the way, almost always underfunded in B2B. So this one takes a long time, so some of you won't get this. But overall, we as marketeers either talk too much about what we sell. The kind of half-good ones say, so this is a problem, and we can solve it for you. But the decision process has a few more steps that we need to include, and they're often on the category and the subcategory level. So I'll show you an example from Climeon. So Climeon is doing green energy. And big drivers are the Paris Agreement, et cetera, et cetera. But before you go into what Climeon does, you need to describe how heat power, which is the category in which Climeon exists, competes with solar power, wind power, nuclear, and all those. Because that's a question that everyone has. So yeah, fine, but how do you compete with the other types of energy? And then you need to understand the different types of heat power. And once you've gone through this and you talk about why you're the best vendor, most of the time you've positioned out almost all competitors. And you become really good at qualifying or disqualifying. Because you're all of a sudden a guide for the customer. This one, I haven't met one company that nailed this in the first attempt. It's pretty tricky. It looks simple, but it's tricky. So I'll show you, and then too few companies so sales are spending a ton of time on taking the customer from having decided, yeah, we should go with you guys, to actually signing the deal. And a lot of it is spent on, how do I buy? What do I need to do before I buy? And then when I bought, what happens before that contract and until we're live? And what happens during the ongoing relationship? Salespeople are spending a tremendous amount of time on answering these questions. And we're spending a lot of time on describing why we are eliminating the risks. So please produce content that respond to these as well, not just, so we're in general too top of the funnel heavy in all aspects. Whereas sales in the complex B2B and more even and higher up is spending a lot of time on downstream stuff. Excuse me. So I skip this one. I'll show you an example from Proof. So I'll show you the same for Proof, and you can judge if it works for you. So first of all, companies like you are struggling with how to split the go-to-market budget. Like, how much should I put on sales, marketing, PR, and then within marketing, how should I split it between retargeting, trade shows, content syndication, SEM, etc. What we often do is we overestimate the power of the brain. And science is showing that we can handle 4 variables that are linear, that behave in a linear way, and with no time lag, so no delayed effect. Does marketing have a delayed effect? Quite often. So I did work, when I was younger, I worked for the Swedish government for a project, and myself and Proof's head of analytics, Magnus, we approached the capital gain tax with regression analytics, and we reduced the error from 80% to 4%. And that's quite a few billions. And we didn't know anything about capital gain tax. We had to alta vista it. And I intentionally say that because I'm old. So Google didn't exist. We had to alta vista it. What the heck is capital gain tax? So we had no domain expertise. Of course, the best thing is to blend domain expertise with mathematics. But the human brain cannot beat mathematics when you have more than 4 variables. And in marketing and sales, we often have 15 to 50 variables. I'm sure if you start to put down what you're doing, you're going, oh shit, we have 37 things. Your brain, it's not that you're stupid, it's just that the human brain, even among the smartest people on earth, is not capable of multidimensional stuff. We're good at memory, associating, but not at multidimensional stuff. And then, once you go into analytics, you have kind of 2 different categories. I'm just showcasing these to you. You have multi-touch attribution, which is based on trying to figure out the customer journey. That is often only digital. And it's often chopped up into only the last few steps because we have cookie deletion, multiple devices, we have places like this. So when to determine money spent based on clicks, you will fail because you miss out 80% over here, and it doesn't catch delayed effects. So people that go all into multi-touch attribution will overspend on short-term stuff like search engine marketing, like email, things that are converting fast with a very aggressive call to action. Whereas marketing mix modeling that is used today by the biggest brands in the world, but they're dependent on PhDs in mathematics. So what we've done at Proof, we've automated marketing mix modeling. So we've robotized it, so we can do it in a few seconds as opposed to weeks and months. And we can all of a sudden make what Unilever and those guys are using applicable for medium-sized and normal large companies. So, and it's really good because we're catching, we call it multipliers. So you put $1 in, how many dollars do you get back? And it's statistically proven, so it's not a guess. We also calculate what's the average time to impact. So if it's PR, for example, it can be 5 quarters. If you use a click-based model, you won't see that at all. I might have talked to someone before that were a bit frustrated over this, that, oh, we can't prove PR. We think it's good, but we can't prove it, so we cut it. And what we're typically competing with is people doing marketing mix modeling with consultants. But 2/3 of those are PhDs or higher, so it's a very small group. So we have some pretty good timing at Proof at the moment. What we do on orientational messaging is these are topics that are not necessarily straight on sales. It's more topics that are around what you're selling. Sometimes we use the Bond movie as an example on how to promote Aston Martin. So orientational messaging, in our case, we're just launching data science for CMOs, so short videos explaining data science topics for CMOs. It's not saying buy Proof at all. It's Proof branded, but it's talking about data science for the CMO. We're coming out with marketing analytics trends, and this is something I run, finance for CMOs. Most CMOs are not qualified enough to be able to really talk C-level language, and typically the biggest handicap is in finance. So we run short videos on finance for CMOs. And we also share what Proof often shows, like marketing is underfunded, probably to the joy of most of you in the room. Sales is overfunded. PR adds most value close to the purchase, not top of the funnel, close to the purchase. Why do you think that is?
Credibility.
Yeah, it's connecting to one of the points I raised earlier, risk mitigation and trust. So if you're seen as trustworthy, then third parties, and this is in line with Todd's presentation as well, for those of you who saw it. And I think several of you have touched upon this already, is too much focus on MQLs. It's an orgasm of MQLs out there. And all companies we're analyzing are putting too much money into lead generation and way too little at closing deals and growing accounts from the marketing side. It's over-invested here. Anyway, those were just a few snippets. We're soon launching also marketing KPI best practices, because we're kind of in that all the time. So these are not sales content, but it's very nice to bring us to the table. The cool thing is that Proof Analytics and Megadeals is kind of in symbiosis. So Proof is quant-based, and Megadeals is research-based. I won't go through all of that. But it's a great symbiosis. So I'm kind of a bit geeky on trying to find the best recipes. Maybe I'm a bit lazy. I want to find the fastest route to the goal, so I nerd around these topics. Great. Bee swarming is another tactic that's really effective. What it consists of is that you visit LinkedIn profiles in the target account and the ecosystem. Most people are checking who's visited my profile now and then, and blending it with IP-targeted ads. Won't go into this. Most of you are totally up to speed with this. We're also doing the same on social media, using custom audiences. So bee swarming is, to just put it more in context, so basically you use Sales Navigator. You go, this is Tata Steel. You find people, in this case, that have renewable energy as a keyword. And in this case, 73 contacts pop up. All the Climeon deals were originated at LinkedIn. And this is one example. And we did this as a team. So many people are visiting profiles, but do it as a team. So all of a sudden, if you have 5 people from Proof Analytics on your profile, you go, well, are they trying to recruit me, or what's going on? Did they just have a meeting about me? That raises a lot of curiosity. It's a very cheap, it's a bit tedious, but it's a cheap tactics of getting in front of your most important people. And this one led to Engman, who's at Iceland, in Iceland. He saw immediately an article about Icelandic geothermal power production, and then came to our website, and 3 months later, we made a $30 million deal with them. And also one thing that I'm glad Snowflake mentioned, so some people take too much focus on putting just a few spokespersons in front. No, put a lot of people in the front. Even R&D people, not just salespeople, but R&D people. Put a lot of people in the front and let them launch the content. Don't launch it from the brand first and then have others share it. Do it the other way. Have persons sharing it first, and then you source it back to the brand. It's way more effective. That's also an easy takeaway from today. And make sure that the content is filled with the people and put them in the front. So over here, for example, I'm their manager, but I'm not receiving this award. I'm not talking to the press. I'm secondary in this context because it's this guy, Carl. He's leading the efforts in the marine industry for Climeon. He's more important than me for them. And also you get a lot of engagement when you engage the staff like this. So again, this is a picture if you want to take a photo. If you want to have a really simple recipe, follow this one. The messaging architecture is kind of, probably some of you got it, but it's very hard to grasp. And then think about, Megadeals is about orchestration, not just sales techniques. It's much bigger than that. So we have workshops. I have 50 books here. We actually have, it's a higher quality, the kind of book we have now. It's the first batch. The one that goes on Amazon later is having, and you know that, some of you have done books, it's kind of compromised on quality. Can you hold it up? You have one there. Yeah, so this is like a premium paper. It's a lot of the fancy stuff. So go to megadealsadvisory.com. And please follow me on LinkedIn. So if you want the slides, email me at christopherengman@proofanalytics.com. Thank you for the half hour of trailer. This requires more time. Thank you so much.
We have a couple of minutes if people have questions for you. They can answer, they can ask.
Yeah, you have questions? I've skipped a ton of stuff, just so you know.
But I will ask one of the questions that I know and I've seen you do. This is the idea of like salesperson being the hero in the organization.
Yeah.
Like I think, how many of you are in marketing? Almost everybody in this room right now. But I think one of the presentations you had was like salesperson is the hero. Salesperson needs to be coming as a trusted advisor.
Yeah.
Could you share like how companies, how people can actually go do that and why they should do it?
Right. So it might feel weird, but if you place salespeople in your content, they're gladly playing with you because you're playing on their ego. They're gladly playing ball with you. So because I know from the Vendormore years that, and you know the same for Terminus, it's a hassle sometimes to get sales engaged. But bring them in, produce content with them, participating in the content, and you'll see what happens. People are not just driven by money. But also it increases the trust on the customer side. So I've been in meetings where, for example, Carl that you saw over there, I had a higher title than he had. But in the marine industry, I could totally sense that he was the star, which was the purpose. Right. I mean, I was just their orchestration leader, yeah, supporter. But he was, and his team, they were really known in that segment because we had put them in the content. Yeah.
All right, cool. Again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.